Hey everybody, welcome to episode 44 of Tactical Crouch, our competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, KickedTripod, joined, of course, by the two biggest brains in competitive Overwatch, the German curmudgeon himself, Yiska, and the Overwatch Oracle, Volamel. And we've got a guest, though, this week. It's not about us, it's about this guy coming in. We've brought an equally large, if not much larger, brain onto the show this week. Okay, there we go. He's been on the show before. He's a former coach for Florida Mayhem Misfits, host what should be your second favorite competitive Overwatch podcast in Tempo Shift. It's Mineral. Welcome back to the show. It can be your first favorite. It doesn't hurt our feelings, but
thanks for having me.
It's my first favorite.
I heard, I think in one of the episodes, a couple of episodes back that you guys did, you mentioned that there's no, you haven't had a single guest on twice. So I thought I'd come and grab that record.
There you go.
Is that true?
I believe you guys said it like a couple of episodes back. So.
Yeah. Oh, dang.
No, we didn't have doubles. And I think Curry Shot would have been the first double, right?
Oh, he missed out on the title.
Get wrecked, Curry Shot.
Oof.
Yeah, I don't think we've had Sideshow on twice, huh?
No, I don't think we did.
Huh. Well, there you go. Well,
I'm not sure.
Hey, congratulations. You made it. First dual guest.
The beauty of streaming is that somebody will correct us if we're wrong.
Third time you get a jacket, like a nice little Tactical Crouch jacket. So, let's make it happen again. Mm-hmm. We do have a ton to talk about, though, so we're going to kind of skip the pleasantries and go straight into it. Before we do, though, the news this week is brought to you by our patron producers, Battle Crab, Made, and Peter Y. If you like the show and want to support, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. We've got a lot of great perks. We've got game nights. We've got our special Tactical Crouch Crouchers channel in Yiska's Discord, which seems to be one of the smarter and more intellectual and tame conversations, but still filled with memes. So, basically what we're saying is our patrons are the best, and they're smart, and they have big brains. And so if you think you have a big brain, apparently not, because you're not a patron yet, is basically what I'm trying to say. Again, patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. That's enough of that. Yiska, I get the Yiska of a disapproval.
Yes. By being a patron, you gain 40 IQ points. It's definitely
one whole wrinkle.
It's true. It's like no, I'm not going to say it. Okay, we do have a lot to talk about, and this just broke right before the show. We haven't even gone through this all the way. I stopped the guys. I said, let's just go through this blind, because we basically are anyway. And let's just get initial reactions on this as much as we can. And we'll go from there and see how we do. So basically, just before the show went live, not like 2 minutes before the show went live, it literally still says on the article it was published 2 minutes ago. That's how fresh this is. Fresh news right here. We got a new blog post on the Overwatch League site saying, titled 2020 Roster Construction Rules. I'm going to give you the synopsis, and then we're going to go through these one by one. The 2019 Overwatch League season concludes on September 29th at Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. And while the league goes on break after that, there's much to be done behind the scenes for all 20 teams to ensure they're ready for 2020. As such, the league has set the following guidelines in place for roster construction, which includes significant changes to two-way player contracts.
Jesus Christ, you nailed that. You know how many takes I would have taken to record this for Overwatch League Daily?
I used to do.
That's why you're not a host.
I used to do some VO work for like Tempo Storm, and I got pretty good at reading it. But still, it's not easy to read. Although you took too many takes, Yiska. You should have just there's a few guests on Overwatch League Daily who would do this, and they would want their takes to be perfect. When I went through and edited all their takes anyways to be perfect. So I thank you for saving me 15 or 20 minutes. But you tried too hard, basically.
Yeah.
How often do you hear that in life? Oh, you tried too hard.
Every video game.
True.
Dude, that TFT man is getting me right now. I tell you, I'm not trying. Are you playing TFT?
Tell me about it. Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, I just before this podcast, I thought let me squeeze one game in, and I just had diamond, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Oh, nice,
Nice,
awesome. I
Are you
think
playing on EU?
Yeah, EU West.
Yiska, you're just on NA now, right?
Yeah.
That's what you have to
Honestly-
do, Mineral, you just have to go NA because that's where all of us cool kids are playing.
Yeah, I'm gonna get master in EU, and then when I move to NA.
All right, fair enough. Should we talk about Overwatch? We shall.
Yeah, we should.
Let's do
I
that.
think
Okay.
we nailed that intro, but let's see what those changes are.
So let's go with the changes. First of all, key dates. September 30th of this year, 2019, the signing window opens for teams to exercise team options on existing player contracts, negotiate extensions with currently signed players, or sign players from their affiliated academy teams competing in contenders. Have we ever had that draw between contenders affiliate or academy teams and their parent teams? Have we had that before where there's some special rules in place?
I mean, in terms of getting to sign your academy players before anyone gets access to them, I think that was in place last year too. Right before the expansion teams can get to touch them, you have the choice to potentially agree with your academy players to sign. Like that's how we signed Hago, for instance, last year. So I don't think this has changed necessarily.
What is the protection for the academy team player to not be lowballed on their salary?
Oh, he doesn't have to agree.
Okay.
It's just if he wants to, and both the team and the player agree to a deal, but he doesn't have to. He can definitely go into the free agency, and then the same rules apply where if he agrees to a deal, you have the opportunity to match. But this just offers a window where maybe if you can reach an agreement and it's reasonable, maybe you can avoid a bidding war.
I would say, if you're an agent, is there any way where you say, take that contract immediately before you know what the other offers are on the table? Or should you always advise players to or decline in the first instance?
No question. I'm not sure. I mean,
it's a bench question right there. I'm going to hold that for when we get bench on the show.
Like if you're going to actually have, if you know you're going to have a bidding war for you, then obviously you shouldn't. The same way, the way Decay, for instance, waited out not only this period, but also the period where the expansion teams could sign players. He waited that out, and then there was a bidding war for him after that. So it just depends on the market, because you don't want to end up in a situation where, well, I'm going to wait for what the market, see if there's a bidding war for me, but then I don't agree. So my team is going to look at other players. Maybe they'll grab someone else, and then I'm out of a job. So it just depends on what you perceive whether you're comfortable enough, I think, to bet on yourself. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to October 7th. So just a little over a week later, or whatever, teams that have completed exercising or declining all existing contract options may submit free agent player contracts to the league office for approval. Teams may also submit player trades for approval. Okay. All right, I'm down with that. Just over a month later, November 11th, 2019, season agreements officially end. Any player not under contract into the 2020 seasons becomes a free agent. In order to facilitate these players signing with new teams before the initial roster deadline, those players set to become free agents in November are permitted to discuss contracts with other teams before their 2019 contracts formally expire. So so going back to the September 30th thing then, so my understanding is that players can't really talk to other teams. There's basically a time where the team and the player have time to like parlay on their own, see if they can reach an agreement before they go to free agency, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, you decide whether you're going to pick up the options pretty much.
Got it.
Or you're going to exercise or not. So that's pretty much the biggest thing, I think.
Got it. All right. November 15th, the deadline for all teams to have a minimum of 8 players under contract. Teams may sign or trade players until June 15th of 2020 at 5 p.m. take a screenshot of this now, put it somewhere really easy for people to find, because every year this date, the trade deadline, gets posted in a document that's not really Google searchable and we never get it. Put it on Wikipedia. Somebody do it, please, so that we can just have that there. But yeah, trade deadline, June 15th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Pacific. And players who were born on or before June 15th, 2002. Dude, I was in middle school. Was in middle school. Are eligible to sign Overwatch League contracts for the 2020 season.
That is very late, isn't it? Wasn't it May this year, and the season's even longer than the one next year?
Doesn't the season start later? No, it started, February 14th, right? Valentine's Day.
Yeah, but it's done by, I mean, according to the information I have that was in the report, by end of August, which is a month shorter than this year. And the deadline still is... Now they actually made the deadline the same as the signing window deadline, which I guess makes some sense. But yeah, I think, for instance, June 15th, I can't think of a player that would have been eligible if that was the roster deadline this year. But I know that I'm sure, for instance, that Fusion tried to push that deadline back in order to get Alarm on this season. Mm-hmm. Like, just imagine it now. He would have come in for Stage 4. That would have been perfect for them, right? But yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on that before we go into the Contenders Academy roster rules?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. We're just laying the base right now, chat. And keep your pants on. Or take them off. We can't see. I don't care.
Time to take the pants off, boys. Pants are coming off on this next one.
Yiska doesn't even have pants. Like, he just doesn't do the show with pants on. But he does wear that shirt a lot on Tuesdays. It says Joe shirt. Oh, we got the knee. Patron-only content, by the way. The Yiska knee.
Racy.
All right, let's take a look at the Contenders/Academy roster rules. The following guidelines are unchanged from 2019. Contenders rosters will be capped at 8 players. Overwatch League teams may reach out to all Contenders players to arrange tryouts and negotiate contracts. Signings of a Contenders player are subject to payment of a buyout fee made by the Overwatch League team to the Contenders team. Buyout fees carry no set minimum and are capped at 100% of the player's average annual base salary in the Overwatch League, plus any signing bonuses, as well as subject to any contractual limitation on such fees in the applicable Contenders contract. The league office may institute select blackout windows during each season to minimize disruption to the competition leading up to and during Contenders playoffs. Okay.
Now, what's interesting about that is they made the distinction that these are unchanged, right? So these have been in effect for this season. Mm-hmm. They've had the power to black out, to deny any trades, or set a period of you can't trade within these parameters this year. And we haven't really heard much about that. So I'm interested to see if that's going to be announced, if that's yet to be announced, if it's happened and it's never been announced. That's pretty interesting to me.
And that's just for Overwatch Contenders to Overwatch League, apparently, right? Because wasn't there some spat about British Hurricane, like taking a player right before playoffs or something that I know people were pretty pissy about.
But they were also like that I think that whole thing's just like unfortunate because their player got poached to the Overwatch League. They had to fill a spot. Unfortunately, came from the lower,
not poached,
tier 3
picked
team.
up.
Yeah, picked up. They're really not poached.
So
yeah.
As you can tell, I clearly don't know enough about the situation. I just remember people are like, wow, right before playoffs, way to go, guys, kind of thing. So that's apparently still a potential hazard.
Bro, smat. I don't know. I don't care for these teams that are honestly sad that when a fellow teammate gets poached by a better opportunity. That's just the nature of the game. Also, 95% of the time, the poaching takes place because the academy team itself got poached on.
Yes.
That seemingly never gets acknowledged in all these very, very angry internet
You can sign any other players, just not players on my team. Don't mess with players on my team. You can go sign that guy's team, but don't touch my team, please. It's like, come on, guys.
Miro, I see you biting your lip a little bit there. How do you feel?
No, I mean, it doesn't, again, none of these things have changed. I mean, in terms of just poaching is obviously, as far as I know, it's when you do it kind of illegally. Other than that is just picking up players, right? If there's no foul play, that's what you're playing for. You're playing to get picked up.
Yeah.
Players are going to get picked up before playoffs. Rosters are going to fall apart at contenders. That's just kind of how it works. And again, none of this is new. None of this has changed. So, I didn't actually know about that blackout window.
Yeah.
That was in place.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know about that rule, but I don't think it was ever enforced this year. So who knows what that is for?
I would imagine going towards maybe Gauntlet, something might happen where, like, okay, these guys are kind of locked into this competition. We're flying them out to Korea as it's been announced. Maybe they kind of halt any trades or any negotiations happening while they're playing in Gauntlet. I don't know. It's very bizarre that this is the first time we've heard about it, but it's also unchanged. Kind of speaks to the transparency. It's like, come on, guys.
Or maybe just the sheer level of like the weight of that event in order for it to happen. If we've seen some situations in the past that have caused uproar, it's just not to that threshold yet. So basically, I guess what we're seeing and then is that it has to be a pretty big deal. Let's keep going on. In 2020, contenders teams affiliated with an Overwatch League organization must compete in the same geographic region as their parent team to be eligible for an academy team designation.
Ooh. Okay.
Wow.
Which has always been kind of assumed, right?
I mean, we saw like Montreal Rebellion for Toronto Defiant, right? Which immediately was one of those where it's like, why Montreal? Why blah, blah, blah. I'm guessing they had this info. Then, are there any teams that right now don't have academy teams in their host region?
I think the one that jumps out is Fusion.
Yeah.
Because they're playing in Korea right now.
Yeah.
And not North America.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because theoretically, they are other subsidiaries of
exactly, and that's why I want to get to that next point, which is very subjective.
Wait, what?
Okay.
You sneak
It's right there.
All right.
Oh, come on, you cheat.
Okay. If an Overwatch League team wishes to operate a Contenders affiliate in a different geographic region, they may do so subject to the following qualifications. The Overwatch League organization must have meaningful local infrastructure in place. And the Overwatch League organization will not receive academy team benefits, including but not limited to exercising the right to match player contract offers. Teams that previously held academy team status and transferred to a new region may have grandfathered academy team rights for a limited window of time.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, maybe we should complete thoughts. We'll go thought by thought rather than line by line.
Yes.
It does make sense, though, because that rule might as well be called the Fusion Academy rule.
Yes.
That is, okay. For those that don't know, I think it's Comcast Spectacor has, I'm not sure if they own.
I don't know the exact business deal, but they're partnered in some way.
For instance, the former Overwatch League analyst for the Fusion, BZ, works for SKTT1 right now, right? I mean, there's not much of a leap of understanding to be made. Also, yes, you do lose the ability to have your advantages as a Contenders affiliate, which in all effect will probably make it so that you have to pay more for the player you want from your academy team then. Fusion G doesn't care. I don't think they care. Like, depending on what... Okay, maybe Fusion... We don't know actually what the next year will look like, because it's very possible that they'll just promote the entire Contenders team, nobody other than I think Nice is underaged. It could just mean maybe they don't want one right now, and they got their talent for the next couple of years, which for the most part is probably not wrong, right? But if it wasn't like that, I think Fusion could just also drizzle and get the players that they are formally raising in Korea by just spending and also having a better relationship to these players through that connection.
So beyond the teams, I think that kind of have teams now, I think it's interesting to think about this point that some people in chat are mentioning, like teams that get screwed. So basically, full Korean teams in other regions that would have probably have wanted a full Korean contenders roster, right, to be able to pull players up. So obviously Mayhem dropping their roster now, because you still have to adhere by the same rules. Presumably you can only have a maximum of 3 import slots, so you can't have a full Korean roster. So Mayhem being a full Korean Isle roster won't be able to have that. You look at a team like Vancouver won't be able to have that.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else do we have? We have Shanghai Dragons is a bit of a weird one too, right?
Here's the thing. That is not technically true what you're saying. You could absolutely just change the region in your Battle.net account and field 6 players if you wanted to be audacious. That is currently possible under the contenders.
But I mean, that should be changed. Like that shouldn't be a case.
That should not be.
I'm assuming they will get on that and they'll actually fix that.
If they try to
exploit further down,
right? Or are they already exploiting that?
But maybe maybe it's further. I'm not sure. But I mean, this kind of plays a little bit, I guess, suppose, because there are more Western teams right now than Eastern teams. This kind of plays a little bit to Yiska's point, the point that he's been making in a lot of these pods, that there's a lot of value in mixed rosters heading into the future. And like London, obviously they already have a roster in Europe, so they will never be able to have a full Korean team there either. So interesting to see how all of this works out. But I guess American teams with a lot of American players are going to benefit from this. I think like teams like Valiant, this is a good rule for, I suppose. I mean, Seoul Dynasty is just a big winner in all of these discussions, I think.
Yeah.
As always.
The Seoul prop up rule changes. I like it. There's like there can't be a team that Fleta is on that is just not winning everything. We're not ready for that world. Sadly, we might be. We might be ready. Joe, I think, is ready.
Ready for what? I'm kind of focused on like the word
he's
meaning.
skipping ahead again, dude.
No, I'm reading what we're on.
We had an agreement, Joe!
I'm not reading ahead. I'm literally just reading what's in front of me.
Get the boo, man.
Unreal.
What is meaningful local infrastructure to you?
That is
very vague.
Do I have a PO box like in Brazil? I can have a Brazilian academy team.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Assume it just means
that
league approved. Which I would have just said league approved at that point, but
yeah.
But does it even make sense to have a roster in another region if your players can just get taken off your roster at any point and you don't have a chance to protect them? I mean, certainly
current academy teams reserve that academy, right? So like that wouldn't affect Fusion, right? Because they have academy status, so they could go.
Yes. And it
for
presumably they'll be grandfathered in as well.
An undetermined public, but privately presumably determined time.
Yes.
So it gives them some time to go, hey, Fusion, you might want to come on back.
But
We're
it's
gonna
also
give you
like
a season, but you might want to come on back.
It's also like the Hurricane question. It's like, okay, well, why do you have a fully Korean team but have a fully European contenders team and not try to supply that? Like there are ways that teams find value in contenders that aren't specifically feeding into the main roster. I've always thought that it would be interesting and a good PR look for a team to just go into an underdeveloped region and just be like, okay, we're going to put a team house here. That's meaningful local infrastructure. We're going to, I don't know, just PR it up.
Doesn't it seem though that
and then you can still have an academy, I guess.
Front office is kind of saying though, hey, we want this to mimic more traditional sports infrastructures, which Yiska I know hates in the sense that they want players to go from open division to British Hurricane to London Spitfire rather than open division to British Hurricane to, wherever else. Like, they want more of that happening that's what these rules say to me. Is they want more players going through the ranks in the respective organizations. Obviously, you're still going to have Overwatch League teams signing teams from other contenders teams and academy teams, because it happens all the time in traditional sports too. I don't know why they would want to change that, but it sounds like they want a more linear route and a system that supports a more linear route through an organization rather than a jump, like these kind of weird diagonal jumps from organization to organization until you land at a completely different Overwatch League organization.
Yeah. It's honestly, can you think of a player that was actually raised on an academy team, not just held, and is also now a starter for a team? There are not that many examples, right?
Does it have to be on the same academy team?
As in, like, yes, from the organization. Otherwise, yes, you can say
You
fusions.
can hop from. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
But I mean, coming from contenders, being relatively unknown, being raised there, going to the main.
Chad brings up some good points, but I don't know. Nero, I guess.
Can you even say that for fusions? Because I mean, you could argue he grew up in British Hurricane. He played a very limited amount of time in Boston, then moved up.
Yeah.
That's why I was making the distinction of like, okay, what if he was just always on an academy team?
Yeah, Nene is definitely a good example.
Even though Nene was already nuts in Korea and already during Apex, right?
Yeah.
Do we include any of the Defiant guys who came from Montreal?
Good show. I don't.
Or am I just totally misunderstanding this conversation?
like the thing is, all of those had careers prior to joining Montreal, is what I'm saying.
Oh, prior.
Just a rookie player immediately put into an academy roster, fostered there, put in the main roster for the Overwatch League. Not too many.
Got it. Okay.
Trill?
I redact my comment. Never happened.
Trill?
Edit it out.
Maybe.
Trill, yeah, we could argue Trill.
Yeah.
I'm not going to die on the hill that he practiced and got his career in Australia. That's not what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. Let's talk about two-way players.
Mm-hmm.
So last big bit. The 2020 season will introduce an evolution of the two-way player contract to incorporate player and team feedback from the 2019 season. Hey, who would have thought that? The former two-way player format was perfect. Teams and players may negotiate the right to designate the player as eligible to compete on an affiliated contenders team. Any player on the roster may agree to be eligible for contenders play, but a maximum of 4 players may be designated as two-way players at any given time.
Has that changed? I don't think so.
Was it 2, 3, or 4? I can't remember.
I always thought it was. I could have swore it was just 4.
Anyways, two-way players are eligible to compete in contenders subject to the following rules. Regardless of where they play, two-way players count toward the Overwatch League roster limit and must earn the same salary and benefits. Two-way players also will count toward the 8-player contenders roster limit for weeks in which their contenders team designates them as eligible to compete. Designated two-way players will lose their contenders eligibility for a 60-day period if they appear in more than 2 Overwatch League matches within any 30-day period. That period of ineligibility begins or resets upon the player appearing in their 3rd Overwatch League match within a 30-day period. Any two-way player who competes in more than 50% of their team's total maps played in the 2020 Overwatch League season will be ineligible to compete in contenders during the off-season period. Mm-hmm. A maximum of 4 two-way players may compete in a single contenders match, an increase from the 2-player cap for 2019. After appearing in any Overwatch League match, two-way players are ineligible to compete in the contenders matches for the following week, i.e., If a player competes in the Overwatch League on a Thursday, he or she cannot participate in contenders until the following Thursday. Finally, two-way players may compete in contenders prior to the start of the 2020 Overwatch League season if those players are Overwatch League rookies or if those players competed in fewer than 2 Overwatch League matches in Stage 4 of the 2019 season. That's why everybody's getting benched. That's why. We solved it. We got it. Okay, lots to digest there. Mineral. What are the big things? I mean, you've spent a lot of time, obviously, especially with like Mayhem Academy, things like that. What really stands out here as being a big deal for Academy teams, Overwatch League teams, and how you structure that transition that Overwatch is trying to facilitate?
So first off, I think the first 2 paragraphs, I don't think that's really changed. Maybe some of the numbers have changed, but overall, like in essence, everything's kind of the same. It's what we discussed before we started rolling as well, in terms of, okay, if a player appears in a third Overwatch League match, he loses his contenders eligibility, but he can still, obviously can still move up. Now, the last line to me is basically there, I think, to avoid the situation that we had this year, the situation with Fusions, the situation with Apply and Elk, where they could only play, heading into the year, they could only play in Stage 1, they could only play 2 games, or they had to change their contract and opt out of their two-way, basically. So that, to me, that's what it changes. And all of those 3 players were actually rookies. None of them had actually played in the Overwatch League. So this rule kind of protects them, which I like. Let's see, what else do we have? We have those are my biggest takeaways from the difference from this season. Any two-way players who competes more than 50%, and the fact that you can't actually move down to contenders if you compete in too many matches. I mean, this protects, I suppose, the contender scene, so that you can just move down your two-way players and have them dominate and win some money in contenders and then move them back up. Also kind of reasonable. No, nothing too big. I think it's the last paragraph, I think, is the biggest change, and it's good.
Yeah. What I will say is, this is, and I haven't seen any of the official league rules, but this is the most technical rule application I've seen so far. And it also makes a lot of sense and actually incorporates the exact issues that we faced this season, plus some that I know are concerns for a couple of teams currently in the Overwatch League, looking forward to next year. So overall, I think that is, I'm not mad at anything here, and I'm mostly positive on all of these changes, unless I'm overseeing something, but yeah. Makes sense.
I don't think so. And again, this is all, so from the moment this blog dropped, we've been recording. So if there's like some other like follow-up post by a dev somewhere or something like that, or some like Overwatch League talent has already tweeted some like whatever, we haven't seen it. So like,
some holes to poke.
Cut us some slack, okay, guys? Like we did what we could with 2 minutes to go. But overall, I just want to get overall thoughts here. Yiska, I feel like you've been probably the most vocal on the show about your dislike of the current two-way system. Overall, is this a big, is this an improvement, and B, is this a big enough improvement?
So first and foremost, I like that we get transparency. Like, I, for instance, don't know what the deal was with Bazzi, that he was a two-way player, went back, or was, I think they officially announced it even, that Bazzi was moving to the Contenders team. And I didn't know what the deal was, and interpreting based on the spirit of the rule, I assumed that Bazzi would still be under this two-play match limitation, also looking towards the gauntlet, right? And also looking towards playoffs. And what is like it says two. It used to say, I think, 2 matches a stage. Now it's differently defined, as in 30 days and 60 days. These windows. So it will certainly add some clarity. It will also help. Honestly, all this mess that we had in stage 1 would have not happened if we had a clear definition. Because someone on the internet will always nerd out, read these, and say, wait a minute. And then it gets signal boosted. And then teams beforehand would have known. The situation that Fusions is standing there with his mouse and keyboard in hand and saying, oh, okay, we're going to play. And someone says, wait, you're not eligible. Axiom, let's go. That scenarios like these cannot happen because we're now crowdsourcing, if you want, that we're keeping the rules.
Cool. All right. Yiska signs off. Loves the transparency of it. Mineral, how about you? Where's your heart set right now? You a big fan of these changes? Are they incremental?
Yeah, I think they're good. I think it just shows that the league has learned from sort of the errors that were in place, or kind of, I guess, the lack of clarity that there was during the season. They adjusted to that. I'm reading the right to match paragraph again a little bit. That's one of the things that I think is new as well, potentially. It says Contenders Academy teams affiliated with Overwatch League organizations may negotiate right to match clauses. So that's interesting as well, because I do believe, is that a change as well? The fact these right to match clauses, I do believe they were kind of default in every academy contract, but maybe now you can, it's subject to negotiation. Maybe you don't have to have that in those contracts. Maybe that's a change, which I'm sure all the Overwatch League teams would want that, but maybe another tool to negotiate over and create some more leverage, I guess, for the players in certain situations.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Joe, what about you, man? How you sitting?
I mean, it seems fine. Nothing. Again, it's so hard. It's a lot of technical jargon, a lot of legalese in a way that I'd have to sit and like try to poke holes and think of, ways that this could be bad. Everything so far seems very reactionary to, everybody else's points. Like, problems that have already existed are now being fixed. Net positive. That's a great thing for everybody involved. Apparently, sifting through chat, apparently Mag is able to be signed, so should be the decay of next season, probably.
Alarm, my friend.
Sure. Obviously.
Had to get that.
I don't think that's obvious though.
Wait, that's insane. Wait, when is the deadline? 15th? And he
June 15th.
He turns 18 on the 12th. That is insane. Yeah, nice.
Yep.
No, he just squeaks in, so
Jeez.
Should be an exciting bidding process for that young man.
Stage 3 Sado, season 3 Sado.
Without the boosting.
Yeah,
yes, without the boosting, yes. Very important.
Surprisingly, yes. Very important. So, anyways, that is the breakdown of the new roster construction rules. I'm sure we will get a bunch more information. Not a bunch more information, but we'll get a lot more. We'll get someone's going to say something that's going to that's going to make something that we said wrong, and just shut up on YouTube about it. Just shut up about it.
But Sideshow said that this is bad.
Yeah.
I'm also sure from the sense of a player or agent, there might be some technicality that we're not considering right now that could make it very unfavorable for players, or where they are losing leverage in how they are getting contracts. For instance, it's possible that this matching rule becomes established among all those affiliate teams, and that every team that doesn't have an academy roster and doesn't want to have substantial funds invested into it just gets some team, affiliated team. Maybe the entirety of Contenders Korea might actually look affiliated at that point, right? And if then that is established as a standard, it's probably then also maybe gets harder for European players. I could see.
Can you be affiliated without being an academy team?
That was my question.
Yeah, like
presumably
say
so,
that?
right? Like
Yeah.
the wording is kind of specific, and they use academy team in some places and affiliated team in other places.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a Team CC in China. They're run by Shanghai Dragons. So, like, it's not Shanghai Dragons Academy, but it's an affiliation with that organization in that team. So that's one of those examples.
Is there some verbiage in there that limits the amount of affiliation you may have?
I'm not sure if, I mean, not to Yiska's point, but I'm pretty sure Team CC is their academy team.
So that was my understanding, is just because they, like, you can have an academy team, but they don't have to be called Shanghai Academy.
Yes, they don't have to be designated in the name, but they all, to Shanghai's point, they do have another affiliated team, Fiat Lux in Pacific, which isn't an academy team. I'm pretty sure CC is their academy team. I could be wrong. Chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
But is Team CC owned by Shanghai Dragons?
Yes, from my understanding.
Oh, okay.
Same company.
The interesting part could also be that each team is allowed one affiliate per region. Maybe the affiliation, based on a negotiation, actually results in some funds going towards that team, and we have more subsidization of contenders regions everywhere, or not everywhere, but at least in the top ones. Maybe
that seems good, right? On paper.
But because you can,
more
for instance, not
infrastructure
deny.
money. I mean, yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah.
Like
You cannot.
definitely
Sorry.
untapped regions, right? Like South America, I think, is one region that we, is, I would say personally, from what, and again, it's been a little bit while since I've casted or, done really deep research into South America, but relatively untapped. There's a lot of people who, love that region of South America. South American fans are a lot there, but also a lot of talent there. We've seen this in multiple esports where South America, for some reason, just struggles to get like that mainstream recognition that, Korea or EU or NA get.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not as much infrastructure, not as much funding. So
Yeah.
Until something is untapped, like in CSGO, the way the LG, SK, MIBR guys came up, and then all of a sudden that becomes a gold mine for talent, and you have 3 or 4 kind of world class teams for years to come. So it just takes kind of one team or group of players to break out, and then there's more money goes into developing talent there. And because now there's no talent in any of those. I mean, sorry, there's no money in any of those regions, so it's very difficult to develop.
Yeah.
Small correction on my end. Apparently, it was not Fiat Lux. It's Cyclone Cumpling, which is their Shanghai's affiliate team in Pacific.
Okay.
So so hopefully, if that is the case, then seems good all around. Spread out a little bit more money to regions that don't have a franchise position there to have an academy team, and spread some support. I think it's
unfortunately good. This also means that the thing that we speculated, that all Overwatch League franchises might be forced to have
at least an affiliate.
I mean, they would probably have this in there if that was going to be the case, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that's happening, and really there's the rules kind of deter some of the team, like Philly Fusion, for instance. They kind of explained the reasoning. There was no reason for them to stay in North America, so this might lead to them actually dropping out. So it's a good point. I think Vancouver, they don't have a team. Well, do they want to get one in Vancouver when they have a fully Korean roster with only maximum of 3 import slots? Maybe not. Who really knows? So really, I mean, the rules could potentially, it's forcing you to develop talent on a more regional basis, I suppose. But it's also for a lot of teams that just maybe financially doesn't make sense. So we'll see how it plays out, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on, because we've got a lot going on here. And one of the big things that has just happened, well, not just happened, but over the past week, Overwatch League or Overwatch World Cup teams have started to kind of come out of the woodwork. We're just around the corner here, and teams are presenting their final 12 players. I would say most notably, we've seen rosters from Team USA, Canada, China, South Korea, and the UK this week. And just a reminder, these are the final 12, but teams can only take 7 to BlizzCon. So it's, man, that's a whole can of worms in itself, right? I have an image, and I didn't put it up on the thing. I'm going to put it up on the stream now. Give me a second, because I want to talk about Team USA first. Team USA. Let's go. Boom. Loop it. Let's do it. Team USA roster. Let's bring it up. Boom. There's the Team USA roster. It's the one I want to talk about. On DPS, you've got Dante, Corey, Sinatra, KSF, and Hydration. On tank, Muma, Super, Fact, Fiction, and Space. And on support, you've got Sleepy, Moth, and Raucous. Man, Joe, since we are the resident born in the United States Americans here, we get first stab at this one. US has had we've had a very disappointing Overwatch World Cup for the past, I would say, 3 years, right? In the sense that we haven't won yet, and we're Americans that haven't won. I hate it. Is that aggressive? That felt maybe
a little bit.
All right, but and every year I feel like the I don't know, the pressure compounds upon itself to find the right combination of players and coaches to bring together that winning team. And this is the team that we've got. And I want to hear your original thought, like your just thoughts. What are your thoughts on this team so far?
Out of 12, I think it's all the names you'd expect. Out of the people who obviously want to actually compete, there are some who have opted out. Obviously, we've seen in other regions. Out of the 12, it seems fine. I think the hard decision is filing it down to 7.
Yeah.
And that question is very difficult to answer because you've got a lot of pretty competitive. I mean, I'm looking at it. There are some shoo-ins, obviously. Like, I think Moth probably gets fit in from everything that we've heard with him on Shaw.
Yeah, Moth and Space were both mentioned by Arrow as being exceptional standouts in their roles.
Yeah.
So I think that you can kind of assume that those two are, 2 of the 7. So there's 5 more slots available.
Can we briefly talk about the meta decisions that most coaches have to make?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Because it's like, when you file down to 7 players, right?
Yeah.
The question is, where do you double up? And it looks like most teams are doubling up on DPS.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which I think now that I see this, I think the US should as well, which goes against some things I've said behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that, Mineral, that you should have the most flexibility on DPS going into the meta from this standpoint right now?
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you want to bring sort of specialist players that, maybe excel at 1 or 2 heroes, but can't cover everything. Definitely, I think that's where you double up. I think you need most consistency you need in the front line and the back line, and then DPS, it just rotates based on map, based on what compositions you want to run. And I think, like, looking at this roster as well, when it comes to DPS, if that's where you double up and 2 guys have to fall off, it's kind of hard to make a decision with this roster, I think, because if you think strictly in terms of versatility, Dante and KSF are the most flexible, I think, on this roster. KSF has a Widow, which Dante hasn't really shown, but Dante has, very solid picks across the board. He has a solid Tracer as well. Corey is obviously the Widow specialist, the hit scan specialist, but do you want to bring Corey, or do you want to bring KSF, who can fill the Widow and fill like a bunch of other heroes as well, very competently, and then look to get in maybe Hydration there and a Sinatra, get more of a specialist? Because if you look at Hydration, I think on this roster, he's probably got the best Genji, he's probably got the best Pharah. arguable in terms of Doomfist. Him and Sinatra both have very strong Doomfists. In terms of who has the best tracer, probably still Sinatra, maybe close between Dante and Sinatra. So very difficult to see in which ways, in which way to go with this roster. But it feels like one of KSF and Dante has to definitely be in there.
Mhm.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
So I personally think the one thing, I don't know when you need to announce your seven.
Yes,
If you need to do
pretty
it
important
now,
as well.
right? If you don't, if you can wait till September, I definitely wait until the last possible
Yeah.
moment
We do
to
know that they
announce
can wait.
right?
They don't have to announce it now. Their final
No.
7. They don't have to.
Okay.
Mhm.
I would not
But I
do
don't know
that.
that
I
date.
don't know why any other team would do that at this point, because so much can change. You don't
Yeah.
know what Sigma might do as well. So
It's true. It's true.
there's still presumably a big balance patch coming after stage 4. So I would wait until the last possible moment to decide. Now, if someone was to ask me now, and we had that discussion, I think it's very fair to say that the US has a tank problem in terms of versatility. Their best performing main tank was Super this season, unarguably, I think, but only on one pick, right? So the thing is, do you then bring in Muma, who has shown at least a baseline competence on all the other picks, also because he had more time or more opportunity to showcase that? And then, like, do you use your tank pick as the double up? That is a problem. So here's my thinking, right? I think when you think of where Super will go, either you think that the San Francisco Shock will now play Smurf or will have much more rotation till the end of the season, and only use Super for a Reinhardt, or you put some confidence into that coaching staff that they have the ability to teach a player the baseline, what you can request of him to play on Orisa, on on Monkey,
Wrecking
and then
Ball.
also potentially Sigma, right? Even though we can discuss if that's even a main tank, but still, I would bet on the horse that is the San Francisco Shock coaching staff would hope that they are able, because they probably want to count on Super. They don't want to count necessarily on Sinatra. I think they don't need to invest resources into Sinatra for the rest of the season. They probably have to invest coaching resources into Super. So I get Super as my main tank, and then I look at the DPS and double up there. Yes, it might actually eventually create problems. Also, let's not. It's a little bit of a problem that you have to also incorporate public opinion, because if you once again flunk out in the first instance that it's possible for you to, and you pick the unpopular picks, woof, that's 2 for 2 for Arrow in the public's eyes, even though that's not at all the case. And especially in this year, it makes absolutely no sense how that stuff works behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
So but in that regard, maybe there's some sway in that opinion. But I would personally go Super, then pick my 3 DPS players. I would honestly, then you gotta think, okay, what about Sinatra?
It's hard for me to find a world. Granted, again, to your credit, like, there is going to be a balance patch. I just don't see a world right now where he fits in this team.
Here's the thing.
That's the weird part.
I'm not saying that not picking him is not the right. It is probably the right decision. But what kind of a world are we again living in where potential league MVP is not a set starter for his local team, and he's not Korean? It's insane.
You immediately looking at this list, you want to just be like, okay, cool, Sinatra, Super, like great players, right? Do they really fit though? Do they fit this meta? Do they even fit their team? We're seeing them subbed in and out. It's hard to say. I think Super has probably the best shot here.
And it's time we start talking about this, because we've seen the hive mind at work, right? And Team USA doesn't just have a results problem; it has a PR problem in the sense that there's an expectation. And you can look at like the All-Stars team to just see how the Overwatch community, the competitive Overwatch community at large, thinks. and it's recognizable names means results. And then when those recognizable names don't get results, guess whose fault it is? And spoiler alert, it's a head coach, and they coach for the Dallas Fuel. So
let's not forget who voted Arrow a second time. It wasn't Reddit plebs that don't have any idea what's going on behind the scenes. It's the guys that have much closer proximity to what is actually going on in the top 500 players, that talk to the players that were there, that have an idea what Arrow is doing. Like it is hilarious hubris of anyone outside of that circle, and even potentially for that circle, to assume to know what Arrow was doing wrong in the last World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to protect him or give him some slack in most regards, and most definitely this year.
remember, who was the coach for Overwatch World Cup Season 1 for Team USA?
I mean, that I don't even consider that exists.
We don't, but what did it do to their, like, largely, I don't want to say their career, but what has it done to them as a former head coach? It was Kai. And Kai and Dallas Fuel in Season 1, man, what a train wreck itself. And again, I totally agree with you, Joe. What a stupid take.
Are people actually saying
Yes,
that? They're like,
they
well,
are!
Kai coached World Cup 2016 and they sucked. Like, if you're saying that, you just need to stay off my timeline because that's ridiculous.
That's the thing, though, is they are. And so I feel immediately right away, I feel for Arrow because he's got a few things. And honestly, Anna Lynn as well. You've got coaches and GMs who have to combat multiple different things. And there are even people who have said, like, gone as far as say, like, if Team USA doesn't get second, then
it's somehow a failure.
It's a failure because they didn't pick D-Pay. Right? And, like, listen, I love D-Pay. I love the dude. I've had limited interactions with him, but he's always been really nice. He likes the show, and so immediately you're a friend to me. But there's immediately this idea among a lot of people, and it's this idea that well, it was what we brought up before, right? Is that how do you get the best 12 players on this roster that appeases both your competitive needs, which we already just talked about, is like Sinatra, Super. Do they fit the competitive needs of the meta and of this team at that moment? And you look at the teams, and 8 out of the 12 players on this roster are on teams that are in the bottom 14 of Overwatch League. And you see these people, like, go read the announcement comments on Reddit, right? Go read them, and immediately there's these conversations about, like, oh, well, more gladiators. And we also dealt with this last year with gladiators having too many players on World Cup. I think it was gladiators who had too many players on World Cup, and they had some coaches and whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And there's a whole other thing there. So, all this to say, guys, chill the out for a second. Can we just relax? You're stressing me out with your comments about, like, and you have, right? Like, Sinatra has been a conversation about as a league MVP, but when you look at the last stage, and now we're in 2-2-2, Yiska, don't you think that conversation has maybe shifted a bit among, like, more on the inside analysts, writers, whatever?
I don't know. I don't consider him to have had a drop off in stage 3, but I mean, we still definitely need more stage 4. Like, the thing is, okay, here's one thing that I see a little bit overdrawn, that this angle that Sinatra could ever only be a specialist. The thing is, he already, I think, considerably changed his playstyle from what he was on Tracer and then what he became on Zarya. Even though, like, I mean, echoing the argument from last episode where I said, yes, there was some overlap. We considered there to be some overlap, transitional property in terms of, okay, track aiming or whatnot, but most of it was really like bubble timing and positioning, and that wasn't necessarily transferable between those two roles. And his ability to then adapt and like focus on, keep in mind, this thing is a long time out. Maybe you can bet on his ability to grind out one pick, by the way, which I absolutely expect to let's say this. It's very likely that we're going to have a DPS pick that is being played the majority of the time by the time that this rolls around, unless we actually go into a loop of super many balance changes, whatnot. But even then, a meta will be established through Overwatch League. And unless there are severe balance changes between then and World Cup, that will sustain itself because teams aren't innovating during that time. Because there's virtually no Overwatch being played, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't know. I just overall, I think that the roster delivered as well as it could on having the right names there. Obviously, there's some people who have opted out. You've got Jake, who I would say is probably commentating again this year, and so I think people will chill out about that. Like, stop saying Jake, just shut up. But at the same time, there's a reason why Jake, even in 222, was like, we're kind of afraid of this guy. So among like Korean players and stuff. So like, you're like, well, is that the right choice? There's a lot going on here with Team USA, and there's a lot, and I don't want to say it's just not as simple as picking the best players.
Yeah.
Or the best coaches in the sense of like what qualifies the best players and the best coaches. Best mechanical players, best players who can work together on a condensed practice schedule because they're also mostly playing in Overwatch League. Well, in this case, all playing in Overwatch League. It's
that's the thing that we also need to consider, and I'm not going to name names, but when a pick happens that very much surprises you that it did happen, consider that this player might be a shithead behind the scenes that nobody wants to work with. It is a very real possibility.
Mm-hmm. Reasonable. Yeah, I mean, honestly, from all of what you guys said, I don't think it's like that hard. It's just, I agree, you know, there's a lot of pressure from the community, whatever, but I think coaches, they're picked for a reason. Like you said, the top 150 players, I think, picked Arrow. That's why he's there. You shouldn't factor in community pressure when you're picking these players. You should, again, like you said, wait as long as possible. Try and figure out who fits the meta the best. Figure out who's your starting main tank, because I don't really want to double up there. If I'm Arrow, don't rule out Fact as well. You know, if Fact obviously has a lot of synergy with Space, maybe Valiant pops off and continues and has a strong showing in the playoffs. And Fact does play, you know, his hero pool is pretty versatile, so don't rule out him either. Pick your main tanks, pick the 3 DPS players that you feel fill the need. Maybe the meta is 40% Widowmaker, then you include Corey and you build around that. If there's no Widowmaker, if there's hard counters to the Widow, maybe you're happy with KSF's Widow, and then you build around someone else who's a specialist. Maybe Doomfist makes a return, and then Hydration and Sinatra dogs you up. So I think you just wait for as long as possible before you do that top 7 lock. You don't care about what the community says. Just pick the roster you think is going to do the best.
Yep, I agree. Easier said than done.
Yeah,
people can't seem to like wrap their idea around this concept of like, yeah, but Pine was a all-star, or you know, and you have these this is
if
why
I could roll
podcast
my
like,
eyes any harder, I would.
That's why
listeners.
I brought it up. That's why I brought it up. And that's hopefully why podcasts like this and Tempo Shift exist, because there does need to be, and it's not Overwatch League's fault, but there needs to be more of an educated dialogue about
like I don't want to hear I don't want to hear no nonsense when Raucus gets put in, because his Ana is actually quite good. I don't want to hear that Sinatra's not being played because his hero pool just doesn't fit the meta. Like you have to be a little bit more critical when you evaluate the stuff. That it's just like my favorite player isn't in, so I'm mad.
And like,
there's a reason why they're not playing.
And to be fair, it's okay to be mad. It's not okay to not understand why they're not playing.
Yeah,
I want to see Sinatra play. I like Sinatra. Sure. I want to see Sinatra play too, bro, but it's not his meta, bro.
Yeah. Which is why I think it's good that all of these coaches are being really transparent and putting in like why they're picking players. So we should have definitely done that last year as well, but no one really did that. Now it's kind of become meta and everyone's doing that, and people are like, well, that's reasonable. Like the explanations are reasonable. Yes. I understand why you did this. Maybe I didn't agree with this pick, but the reasoning seems fair, and we'll see how it goes. But at least you get a little bit. And I think on an Overwatch League level, it's a little bit harder because there's always sensitive information. Say a player isn't playing and you're asking questions. Well, maybe it's a toxic player and you don't want to say anything because it's going to hurt the player. Like it's different because their actual careers are at stake, right? Whereas World Cup, it should be a little more fun. Obviously, you're battling for pride, but it is for a little more fun. So it is more for the community more than anything, I guess, and maybe to let some players shine or whatever. So I think it's fine to just be transparent with these things, explain your picks, and so it's all in place, and I like that most coaches are doing that.
Yep. That's also the thing. Coaches aren't wrong in the picks that they made. They can only be wrong in the reasons for why they made these picks. Yeah, like you're bemoaning the symptom of what is actually the underlying. You can like the disagreement should be now you get the transparent argument from the coach why someone is picked. You disagree or agree now. You don't wait until the World Cup and confirm your bias. And then I don't care about your opinion then, because all that matters is now to evaluate the opinion, say, okay, this makes sense, doesn't make sense, and not talk about the evidence that Dennis presents. Say, oh, it was so obvious all along. Like. That's
the hindsight is 2020. I don't know why we didn't put Valiant lower. Yiska, blah 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 blah. We put him in our top 6. Therefore, we're Overwatch idiots.
They're getting them,
but we are though. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts? I mean, we've got Canada, China, South Korea, and UK rosters.
China, pog.
All right.
Pogs in the chat for China.
It would not be a Tactical Crouch podcast with Joe if he did not get to get his 5 minutes of fame for China. China is a region, by the way, everybody, and Joe feels passionately about them. I mean, so you've got Jinmu, Elsa, Gushue, Leave, Eileen, Yuvital, and Kyle. I mean, okay, so you've got the Chengdu Hunters. Okay, great.
I would say that it's kind of weird that Eileen's in and not like a hit scan specialist, but there again, it's so far out that maybe that gets rotated away.
Doesn't Leave play some hit scans as well?
He does. I don't remember him being all that fantastic at Widowmaker, but there again, I think he's a prodigal talent that is going to crush in 2020.
And Rui probably wants, remember that he signed with Chengdu, and he probably wants to give him a little stage time warm up for Overwatch League as well.
Yes, definitely. Leave makes a lot of sense. Eileen is the one that I'm like, that's a little interesting. I like
a lot of
Eileen.
overlap with Jinmu.
Yes, exactly. The only thing that I think Eileen brings is the Sombra, which I would assume that Leaf could play as well. So Leaf and Jinmu cover a lot of bases. There's a little bit of a hole for specifically a Widow specialist, like a Yang Xiaolong. Granted, Shy can't play, but I'd love to see Shy in there again. I'm sure there's a name I'm forgetting from contenders, but that one's just a little weird. Maybe Leaf's been practicing Widowmaker, who knows? But who knows? Widow might not even be meta. Who knows? It's hard to tell. But love every name here. Fantastic team.
Very strong roster. I think they'll do very well.
Very well. Yep.
Veltel's been very impressive as well, I think, especially on the Mercy. I think he's very, very solid. Makes very few mistakes, and then just solid across the board. Gushue also super, super solid. One of the better main tanks. So, is this a top 2 roster? Is this better? Is this roster stronger than Team USA? for the potential Team USA roster?
I think so, yeah. Without a doubt.
I mean, just like in power levels, I agree. Of course, like we all know, it depends on the actual meta.
Yeah, the meta's
100%.
gonna. But if we had to evaluate it right now in the 2-2-2 kind of landscape, I give China a sizable edge. I like China a lot.
Yeah, I think.
And this is also being coached by somebody who I don't think gets enough credit in Ray. I think the guy's the best coach you've never heard of, 100%.
The thing is with China is I see very few roster issues in terms of just having the entire hero pool covered, and much of it actually comes from Leaf. Like the issues that we had with picking DPS for the US, Leaf solves all of those, like single-handedly almost, right?
Yep.
So
I can't stress it enough. You've seen Jinmu. You like Jinmu? Great, cool. Wait till you see Leaf. You saw him last year, and I think people forget what he did last year in World Cup. He was a big reason why this team was so strong. Absolutely dunking on kids with Doomfist. Has a fantastic Genji.
Yeah,
He literally plays everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
He's
don't
crazy.
need to remind me. I was on the receiving end of that
I kind
poundage.
of forgot that I'm not gonna lie. It's a nut.
That's too
Yeah.
funny. Oh man. Yeah. So Team China, Joe's excited about. Big surprise. Subscribe on Patreon if you want Joe to talk about China more. If you don't want Joe to talk about China more, subscribe on Patreon. Okay. That's enough about World Cup. We talked a lot about World Cup. But we do need to take a look back. We are through our first week of Stage 4, which, of course, the big elephant in the room there is that we saw our first week of 2-2-2. We get to evaluate some of our initial gut reactions to how teams will improve, plateau, or get worse. And yeah, so here's the big highlights. And let's send this one to Joe, dude, because man, China, Guangzhou goes 2-0. They defeat Fusion and Boston here in a 2-2-2 meta, a team that we've seen definitely some highlights, but we've also seen some low lights, I guess, in what we've seen from Guangzhou so far. So what are your initial thoughts here on a team that is now 2-0 in Stage 4?
I think as they get more comfortable, from what I've seen so far, they're definitely going to trend upwards. Next week's going to be telling of their ceiling potentially. Next week's opponents for the Charge are London and Spark, who don't look all that put together, but there again, talking to Mineral before the show, I think he brings up a great point that a lot can happen in a week, right? That's a lot of time in between those matches. We saw teams kind of evolve, with match 1 and match 2 looking much better in match 2 and much more coherent in the 2-2-2 landscape. So we'll have to see, but I think this is a team that's trending upwards since Stage 3. I think you look at Stage 3 and you look at how they ended their stage, and coming into this new DPS focused landscape, you've got players like Happy, you've got a lot of flexibility, a lot of things, a lot of positives for Charge.
Cool.
I think they're going nowhere but up. Nero as well. I think he doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, Nero is a stud. I mean, they had a very solid week, I think. The game against Boston, I think that doesn't tell you that much. I think Boston just looked really, really bad in that game. They looked much better the day after, granted, but they just looked completely off. So that was kind of a walkover. The game against Philly was very close. I liked kind of what I saw from them. The only question marks I had were potentially the Trace and Sombra compositions between Nero and Happy. I'm still not super sold on Happy's Sombra, but that's about it. I think they cover almost everything. I think Nero has looked fantastic on pretty much every hero he's played. I really liked some of the innovation they did as well. Actually, dropping a video on that tomorrow. The composition they ran against Philly was this bunker with a Zarya, which I don't think any other team did during the first week, which was a very interesting adaptation to kind of the main meta where Hotba is on the Zarya and his only job is just bubble every hook. So for 2 maps, Poco couldn't land a single hook on Guangzhou's attacks, and then he was forced to swap. So a lot of really interesting strategically innovational things there that other teams haven't experimented with. Again, I'll go more thoroughly into that tomorrow, but those are the 2 maps where they absolutely dominated. The other maps were kind of close. They lost first one in the dominant fashion, 4th was very close, Junkerton map, and then 5th was close. And Philly didn't look that well towards the end of the week. So I think still a lot of things to prove for Guangzhou. They definitely look a lot better. But so the same thing with London. I think they still have, like, the London beat, they looked very, very good. Granted, Prophet is an animal.
Yes.
He was absolutely pounding, but they also beat, who did they beat? Defiant and
Defiant
Fuel.
and Dallas. Yeah. So
again,
it's
a lot
like,
to prove still.
Yeah.
So that game, I think both teams, both London and Guangzhou, look like potential playoff teams, but I think both of them have a lot to prove, like who's actually going to be able to make that postseason push.
Yiska, have you heard of this player called Prophet? Is this somebody that is on your radar as somebody to watch? I mean, London, so Spitfire did go 2-0 in week 1. They beat Dallas and Defiant, as we already said. So they're another team I wanted to talk about because, and Yiska, I want to get your thoughts on this because they're not the toughest teams. I think some people ranked Dallas a little bit higher in a 2-2-2 meta, but
erroneously.
I don't know how.
we could talk. I mean, it's basically, I have a theory, Joe. My theory is if a team did well in like a dive-ish meta or existed in a dive-ish meta, they assume that they're going to do well in a 2-2-2 meta. That's my theory. That's my hive mind theory. I don't agree with it.
Could see that.
But that's the only reason why I see people saying that. But anyway, Spitfire defeat Dallas and Defiant. Go 2-0. They're up. They're looking okay. Are you on the Spit? Is this the time where the Spitfire start picking it up again and we all of a sudden get a team that's making a run for gold here?
It really kind of depends on how the meta shakes out on which main tank pulls ahead. And I think that's going to be kind of telling of the Charge London match. That's, kind of leading Thursday this week. On which main tank leads. Is it going to be the Wrecking Ball or is it going to be the Orisa? Which one is going to be, the more picked more often? Which one is going to be played more often, I think, is going to dictate obviously the meta, but out of these two teams, it's going to kind of be the battle that I'm looking at. You've got Rio, who has played it even in GOATs, looked solid on it, kind of drafted strategies with that in mind, and then Gesture obviously showing that he is a fantastic Orisa player once again. We were reminded, last week, we should have always paid attention from playoffs that he's an absolute monster and the team works around his ults very, very well. So it'll be interesting. I don't know that I'd love this to be a battle of styles where Guangzhou sticks on Wrecking Ball and London sticks on Orisa the entire game. It's probably not going to be the case, but that's kind of where I'm focused on. But I do think London has a lot of firepower to kind of put their backs against and use as anchors that Charge do, but not to the same degree.
So you think London overcharge next week?
Yeah, I'm going to say London overcharge, like 3-1 London.
All right. Yiska, what's your thoughts on London so far? Are you, I know you get a lot of content that you can recycle. But besides that, what's your thoughts on London so far in week 1, stage 4?
The thing is, it's so hard to evaluate where they are. Like, it's you can look very, very good on the practice range, right? But when it comes to war, it's a different thing. So I'm confident we will be able to say something definitive after this week, maybe. But I'm not willing to put all my horses on London there. If I had to, I think also I would say London is at least semi back. They probably shouldn't have an issue with playoffs whatsoever. At least play-ins. Let's say that they're not going to drop off, and I'm not sure how many wins they have. I think they are already above likely play-in range, so they probably statistically have not mathematically, but percentage-wise have clinched play-ins. I think.
I mean, I can't tell by the Overwatch League website, but so you have division leaders, which is Vancouver and NYXL, and then you have other teams, which are Shock, Spark, Gladiators, and Spitfire. And then below that is postseason playoff cutoff, which is these others. So I don't think that means that they've clinched, though. It's just how they're trying to say currently in this moment, which is not helpful. Come on, Overwatch League.
They're like four wins and 8 maps in the clear, though. I think there's absolutely no way they're dropping out. I mean, they have games this stage. They have games against Florida, Houston, Atlanta. I mean, all of these games, again, if London drops the ball, they're losable games, and they have games against Vancouver and Atlanta too. And Atlanta, who I think also looks better. But yeah, it's I mean, I don't know. I thought Spitfire looked pretty solid. Burnering looked solid. They only lost from Ilios, I believe, which is by far their worst map. They look horrendous on that map. On the other. Yeah, and other than that, I think they looked pretty solid across the board. The ones were pretty dominant on most of the maps that they played. Granted, they almost got full held on Hollywood against Defiant, but then after that, they just rolled them. But it's just like I told Joe before the podcast, it's so difficult to gauge right now because even this week we saw teams completely turning around even within the week. You saw Outlaws losing to who was the first game they lost to?
Outlaws lost to Paris.
They lost to Paris, and then they go up against Gladiators, and they beat Gladiators, who beat NYXL. But when you look at that game, that's not the same Outlaws that played against Paris. Not in terms of like the players or whatever. Well, granted, did play a little bit more, but the starting compositions are completely different. So just within the week, the meta was developing. You have to understand that a lot of these teams, especially the teams that made the playoffs and potentially had a couple of days of break, they haven't scrimmed in 2-2 much at all. So they start a little bit later. They go into their first days of scrims with a preconceived notion, well, this should probably be good, let's experiment. They eventually run into a team that has practiced it for a couple of days longer than them. They own them. They maybe switch to that, but then they're not as well versed with that competition. So you're always playing catch up if you made the playoffs. And a team like the Outlaws, they did make the playoffs. A team like New York, they did make the playoffs. So it does feel like it took them a little bit to catch up, but then Houston did make the adjustments against Gladiators. They come out with, again, some creative stuff there as well. Some bunker compositions with Lucio Moira and Reaper, where they just rush in. They block off the enemy man. They just rush in, catch the Gladiators off by surprise, and no one can prepare for each other. Everything's just like a crapshoot. So I think we're gonna get a lot more answers like week 2, week 3. But right now, it's sort of impossible to say, I think.
Actually, EEE in chat, who I've also collaborated on a statistical article, he runs these Monte Carlo simulations, and he calculated that London has 99% clinched play-ins, but only 38% top 6. Now that is, in my gut feeling, seems low looking at the rest of their schedule. I
agree.
The thing is, let's actually look what the last couple of matches are for them like. So the next one is Charge, then Mayhem. That's at least a 1-1. Okay, then you get into Vancouver. Worst case, 1-2. I think they'll win against Outlaws fairly easily, 2-2. Atlanta Reign. Okay. And then that was the last match. I think that's a 3-1 even. I think they actually make it. I think I would give them a higher than 50% chance of making it.
Yeah, I think I agree, especially because not just because of their schedule, but also the guys below them. There are 9 maps in the clear from Shanghai. So Shanghai is 1 game back, but even if they get that game back, they're still 9 maps behind. And then you have Seoul, who have a better map differential, but are 2 games back. They're also kind of dropping. They're moving in the wrong direction. Seoul also has a tough schedule. They have they still have Guangzhou. They still have Valiant and Shanghai left. So there's no way I think that they go 5-2 at this stage. I think they're going to drop 1 or 2 more games. Seoul will. And after that, the teams that are trying to catch up, the Guangzhous, the Atlantas, the Valiants, they can't really catch up. So I think just because of the teams right below them and their schedule and their current form, I'm fairly confident that London will make it into the top 6.
You heard it here first. Let's go. I think they will too. I do, though. I do want to play a little game called Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, because I need you to make some definitive statements about it, about next week's matches. We've got a few coming up that are pretty exciting. But we also have to get out of here. Guangzhou versus London. Joe, you said London?
Yeah,
over
London,
Guangzhou
3-1.
3-1.
Yeah.
Mineral.
Same.
All right. Yiska says same. 3-1 London. Mineral.
Oh, let's go 3-2 Guangzhou.
Oh.
All right.
Spicy.
I like it. I like it. What about LA Gladiators versus Shock? Yiska.
Shock.
Score.
3-1.
All right. Mineral.
The maps.
I agree with that. Shock 3-1.
Joe.
Unfortunately, I will have to agree with that as well.
All right. Fair enough.
Because you're the guy for the hot takes. It's just like always.
I mean, there's hot takes. You just gotta hit. You gotta battleship me. You just gotta hit the right one. You gotta hit the right match.
What about this one? Chengdu versus NYXL, Joe. Something that people might gloss past.
I think you may have hit my battleship, sir. I think this is Chengdu in 5. That gets a crickets. If I could hit the crickets button, that would be a crickets right there. There we go. Just let's let that simmer, chat.
No, it was a good joke.
Let that show.
You man.
I think this is Chengdu in 5. I think they continue with the control strats. I think they still take, I'm going to say hybrid. I think they win all of the control maps. They take hybrid 3-2 Chengdu. This is a New York that's struggling, has been struggling. I understand Mineral's point in saying that a week can do a lot of things for this team, but they're having to field players that aren't necessarily comfortable at the roles that they're putting him on. Specifically, Libero on the Sombra. Mono looks a little lost. This team does not have a lot of. I do not have a lot of confidence in this team. I'm willing to say that they go 1-1 this week, but I'm going to say that Chengdu beats them. I think New York beats Paris, but Chengdu beats New York.
All right, Mineral, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think 3-1. I have more confidence in New York. Again, I'm piggybacking off my own argument in the fact that I don't think NYXL has had a lot of time to prepare. The fact that they actually went to the playoffs, and they looked lost. They looked very, very lost against it. I again launched a video today where they're just too slow to swap. Their starting compositions are all wonky and wrong, so they just looked out of sorts against the Gladiators, and I think they'll figure it out for next week. Whereas the Chengdu Hunters 3-2 Philly, 3-2 Boston games were like a point away from going the other direction. The Philly one was literally lost until Jinwoo just came in and like cleaned house and got a 4K. So they're like a team fight away from being 0-2 last week. So I'm not that high on Chengdu after week 1.
All right, Yiska, Joe hit us with the hot take. Says Chengdu over NYXL next week. Mineral says no. Where are you on this one?
I'm not prepared, as apparently Joe is, to call Pavani an absolute idiot and terrible coach with spitting on his record. I think they have a lot of resources to fix this situation, and once committing, especially because it's the last game of the week, so that's like the most time that they could potentially have to prepare for this. I also probably think they would, if they want to give priority to a team, I probably would do it to Chengdu. And yeah, I think that's a New York 3-1.
All right, Joe. This is why we call it Joe the Oracle, because we get these really well thought out opinions against what Joe says, but Joe ends up being right. So tune in next week to see if Joe's right. Because I'd love to pass off the Overwatch Oracle title to somebody else. So by the way,
Joe
I wish
was a
somebody
Pokemon,
would. Yeah, go ahead. Go do it.
If Joe was a Pokemon, he would be China. Because Pokemons only say their name. That's the only word they can talk. And it's just like, okay. Who wins this match? China.
That's why I predicted Gladiators to beat NYXL, right? No Chinese players there.
True.
And who was right? Because I remember you picking NYXL.
Yeah, I mean, you only have the ability to be rational if there's no Chinese player on any team.
Oh,
yes,
that's what it is. Okay.
He's the Oracle the problem is, like, his prediction rate went down so much by the introduction of four new China.
Yeah.
Plus it's just like China.
Yeah. And where was Houston and Florida Mayhem on your power rankings again? That's right, above Chengdu, and I'm a lord, and you're not.
Mineral, we got to talk about this man.
What did you guys say?
You made this man a lord. That's not true.
He had Chengdu over us.
I bet Yiska that Chengdu would place above either, and he took this. He accepted it. I was open to negotiation. I said Chengdu was going to place above either Florida or Houston, and he said yeah. I'd even be willing to say both. If they place above them, I would win the title of Lord.
Oh, before the season, right?
Before the season, obviously pre-season.
Both Florida and Houston would rank above Chengdu.
Yeah, so I take a quarter of responsibility for Yiska losing that bet, and every fourth time I address Joe, I'm gonna call him Lord.
No,
Very good.
When it comes to TFT, I already call him Lord. He's really good at it.
So, were you done with the games? Because I want to highlight one other game that I think is very important next week. The Valiant Soul game, I think, is extremely important for Soul. Like I addressed Soul a little bit, but I think it's kind of a must-win game almost for Soul, simply due to the fact, not even forget top 6. Soul has already dropped out of that kind of. But if they slip any further, if they slip outside 7 and 8, then they're putting themselves in a position where they have to win 2 matches, 2 best of 5s or best of 7s or whatever the playing format is, to get into the end of season playoffs. And if they don't win that game, they're starting the stage 0-3, going to be very, very tough. And if Seoul ends up slipping down to like 12, 11, 10 range, do you trust them to beat like Guangzhou and Atlanta and then Shanghai to get into the playoffs?
Nope, not a chance.
I think it feels like a must-win game for Seoul Dynasty. I think sort of for Valiant too. I mean, they're in much worse shape, so I feel like that game just has so many implications. So I think whoever loses that game, they're going to be in a pretty bad shape.
Certainly in the hot seat for morale, for where they sit in the meta, and like you said, end of season implications.
I mean, it kind of kills the Valiant overall. Like if they lose that game, then they're at 9-4.
I don't think they can afford to lose too many more.
They cannot. So must-win game, I think, for both teams.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's hard to call though as well. Like predictions on that. Like where do you? I genuinely don't know where to fall.
Yeah, those are the ones where it's like, ask me again in a week, right? Like, that's kind of what I needed there for that match. But we do need to get out of here. It's time. Before we get out of here, though, we do need to, first of all, thank our patron producers, Battle Crab Maiden, Peter Y. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you like the show, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. Find out all the different ways you can support. We really do appreciate it a ton. So thank you so much for supporting a little podcast right here. A little weekly vent session for some. But yeah, so head on over to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. Other than that, 5-star iTunes reviews. What do we got going on, Joe?
5-star iTunes reviews. We've got Ice Ham Jello coming in.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Coming in hot. I don't know what you said. I don't know if you said anything, but thank you for leaving those 5 dink stars.
Yeah, Ice Ham Jello has been amazing. Has supported the show through gifted
Easily,
subs, bits, all that, and now a 5-star
thanks.
iTunes reviews. What a legend!
Big legend.
So if you want to be
Legend
like
in my
Ice
heart.
Ham Jello, go to iTunes, leave a 5-star iTunes review, and say something funny. And you know what? I'll start giving you those things to read, Joe. How's that sound?
Gladly read them, as long as they're PG-13. Kids, don't be edgy.
PG-13. That's fair. PG-13, make it happen, and we'll read it on the next show. Really do appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here for the week. Before we do, Mineral, first, thanks for being on the show this week, man. It was a blast to have you on here. I know, we're no tempo shift, but we try our best here. And so really appreciate you coming on. Shout out to
always a pleasure, and I do have a lot of catching up to do to get to your level. So appreciate you having me on.
You stop it, you stop it. But Mineral, as for you, shout outs, like where can people find you first and foremost, and then like shout outs, what do you have going on this week, that kind of stuff?
Just watching all the Overwatch games. Making content, dropping daily videos sort of this week leading up to the games, mostly analysis videos on the games this week, things I found interesting. So you can find it in my YouTube channel, Mineral OW, Mineral_OW on Twitter, and to catch all of that content.
Awesome. Let's go over to Joe. Joe, man, what do you got going on this week? Where can people find you? All that good stuff.
What do I have going on? I'm working on something.
It was not a surprise question, by the way.
No,
do
but
the
I had to
same
think
one
about it.
every week. Yeah.
I know. Working on a big one. Trying to get that out. Just want to say thanks to all the people, dropping some love as of recently. Got a lot of kind words. So again, heartfelt thank you. Definitely check out Mineral's analysis videos. It's always helpful to kind of, you don't get to actively bounce ideas off of somebody, but having somebody kind of introduce new ideas to the way that you think about the game is always super helpful. So definitely go check that out. And yeah, follow me on Twitter. Not too much else to announce past that.
That's at Volamel everywhere, by the way, guys.
Yes.
Just Volamel. Just search for Volamel. Except for his TFT account, apparently is something totally different, but whatever. Joe doesn't want to be friends with you on TFT. That's why he changed it. He's like, yep, kinda.
What can he say?
Yiska, what about you, man? Shout outs for the week. Where can people find you? And I don't know, you got anything cool coming up on Upcomer or whatever?
Yeah, I'm working on a weekly feature. Topic is determined. Can't talk much about it. Hopefully it, I have 2 topics in mind. Hopefully it's the more impactful one that honestly is pretty close to my heart. With player mental health. But yeah, in general, you can follow the Twitter and I'll post all my content there. Of course, Discord. I also put it in the announcements there, so that's where you can find me.
There you have it. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod. Mainly just do this show. Twitch.tv/KickedTripod, Twitter.com/KickedTripod, YouTube.com/KickedTripod. You can find everything there. I thought I had something to say extra on this, but I don't, apparently. So, this is what it was. The Guangzhou Charge this week had kind of say, who are your favorite Overwatch content creators? And a lot of you tagged myself, Yiska, Joe, Tactical Crouch. Just thank you so much for doing that. That was really nice of you all.
That was nice.
We really did appreciate you kind of acknowledging us in that way. It means a ton. So thank you so much for doing that. We really do appreciate it, and it is definitely like just kind of a great, sometimes you just need the pat on the back. Just like, hey, just so you know, keep doing what you're doing. That was definitely one of those, keep doing what you're doing. But we got to get out of here. Before we do, big thanks to everybody again for hanging out in chat. We had a ton of people in here this week. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. We record live Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific time at twitch.tv/KickedTripod. You can find the show everywhere else by searching for Tactical Crouch. We're right there. You can listen to us on your podcast feeds, YouTube, Spotify, wherever. We're there. Other than that, that's going to do it for episode 44. Again, make sure to go follow Mineral at Mineral_OW. Search for Mineral Overwatch on YouTube and anywhere else. Tempo Shift on all your podcast feeds. Make sure to go check that out. Other than that, we'll be right back after the music for the post show. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.